Hello Internet, my name is ZemosHD. Today we're going to be talking about no bullshit. Oh boy, this whole Trump impeachment thing is really getting on my nerves. Oh, not because he's getting impeached, no, I like that. It's the right-wing response to it. It's just so stupid, especially this one. It's a perfect example of how people reason in just completely illogical ways. But let's get into it. Let's stop procrastinating.
Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we return to our newest video series called It's Okay When Liberals Do It. This time we're focusing on the recent and ongoing impeachment proceedings that are going on in the United States House of Representatives as we speak. This impeachment, of course, is a total sham though, and it's just another way for the liberals and Democrats to attack a duly elected president that they don't like. Donald J. Trump, of course. And for those who don't know, impeachment is the process with which you can remove politicians from power. And in the United States president's case, the House and Senate need to vote him out for some pretty high crimes and misdemeanors, if it's legitimate. And impeachment is typically a very rare occurrence that would only happen if something really bad went down. For example, President Nixon was the last majorly corrupt president who certainly would have been impeached back in the 1970s, but he fortunately resigned and left on his own accord. Nixon got caught up in the whole Watergate scandal where he basically was illegally spying on his opponent for re-election. But things got even worse for his camp when they tried to cover that up too. Long story short, Nixon got caught doing specific and concrete things that were wrong. And impeachment would have certainly been voted in and voted on by both parties, unanimously, all across the board. But in this new case in recent times, with Donald Trump's impeachment, the so-called crimes are much less obvious, if they're even to be considered infractions at all. And this all goes back to that one story where Trump was asking Ukraine if they had any information about Joe Biden's corruption. That's it. That's the whole big deal here. Trump was doing his job and completely in line, but the left has created this exotic and out there narrative to try and make his case look much worse. Before we move on though and talk more about Trump's impeachment, and also of course, we're going to talk about why this is an it's okay when liberals do it situation soon too, but let's first take a moment to check out our exciting new sponsors, NordVPN.
Okay, so no bullshit's overarching claim here seems to be that Donald Trump's impeachment is just a sham in order to help the Democrats get elected and stop him from getting elected in 2020. However, this is a valid impeachment, and let me show you why. Multiple sources have gone into explicit detail on how Trump broke the law, with some even literally citing the literal law that he broke.
Okay, back to impeachment then. Not only is Trump's impeachment a political sham, and it's a biased, one-sided attack coming from his liberal Democratic opponents who have no real wrongdoings to hold against him, well, it actually gets far worse than that if you can believe it. First of all, as many have acknowledged, and some have even outright said that, this whole impeachment is being done because they want to stop Trump from winning re-election in 2020. And sure, that might sound like it could make sense if you're a radical lefty, but really, impeachment isn't supposed to be used politically like this at all. The Democrats are basically admitting that they can't beat Trump fairly, and they know they're going to lose the election next year, so this is kind of their plan B option. I mean, if they were going to win the election, which is less than a year from now, well, they wouldn't even need to bother with this impeachment stuff now. But alas, they know they're going to lose, so they're desperately trying to cheat and take Trump out in another way, in a more sketchy way that shouldn't happen. For example, here's a clip of Democratic darling and leading Trump derangement syndrome sufferer Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Here she all but says that the left needs to impeach Trump now or they will lose again in 2020. Take a look at this clip.
We also need to move quite quickly because we're talking about the potential compromise of the 2020 elections. And so this is not just about something that has occurred. This is about preventing a potentially disastrous outcome from occurring next year.
Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, that's pretty telling right there. And that's not really how impeachments are supposed to work at all. Impeachment is to be used if a leader actually commits obvious crimes. Then it's used to remove them from office to get the corruption out of the system. But here, AOC and the left are straight up saying they're using impeachment so Trump doesn't win re-election next year. They're scared he's going to get a good or better turnout at the voting booths. And they should be, because he definitely will. But since the left has no chance at winning in a fair or square way, because all of their candidates are terrible and unlikable, so that's why they're drumming up this fake impeachment nonsense. Next, let's find...
Wait, but that's not all she said. I'm gonna show you the full clip here. Obviously, it's gonna be a little sped up, but you should be able to get the full gist of what she actually said.
Republicans, as you know, they're clearly unanimously standing by the president, at least so far. Will it hurt Democrats if you can't successfully persuade any Republicans that this all rises to impeachable conduct?
I'm actually not overly concerned about this because I think the whole point of our public hearings is to present these facts to the public and to let the general public really see the facts for themselves and to understand why we have chosen to move forward with the impeachment inquiry. I think what we heard today was just astounding. I think what we heard today was just astounding and devastating news for the president, for anyone that was in the administration that was really partaking. And frankly, this is devastating for the country. Our national security has been compromised. Our elections are potentially compromised. And so I think right now what Republicans have to do is decide what their role is going to be in the scope of history, because we will look back at this time and really truly examine the moral decisions that each member of Congress has decided to make.
So what jumped out at you, Congresswoman, about the most devastating new information that emerged?
Well, you know, it's been discussed with this call with Ambassador Sondland and President Trump. It's a personal call that our witnesses testified in aid as overhearing, where Trump was personally invested in these investigations. I think it has added a layer of proximity. You know, one of the ways that the president could have potentially tried to get out of the situation is saying, you know, put several degrees of separation between him and some of this illicit activity. But what we heard today was that he himself was making and partaking in some of these phone calls, not just Giuliani, not just anyone else in the administration, but him. And that really adds a much more disturbing degree of the involvement that he had in using the powers of government to create politically motivated investigations.
At that news conference with the Turkish president, the president said he doesn't remember any such call, poo-pooing the whole thing. What do you say to the president?
Well, you know, if he doesn't remember making a call like that, I would be quite concerned, but that doesn't mean that it didn't happen. I think a lot of what the president's reactions tend to be deflecting, but I think it is quite telling that he is not being defensive about this. This is an extraordinarily serious allegation that is being made by a person who works in his administration. And so if he were to defend this, he should do so quite forcefully. The allegation that's coming from someone within his own administration is extraordinarily serious. That's not something that you remember or not remembering whether you did or didn't do.
A lot of the initial messaging in all of this uproar involved the words quid pro quo. Do Democrats, Congresswoman, need to fine-tune their language on all of this? How do you think Democrats should be making their case to the American people?
Well, I'd like to remind everyone that one of the initial folks who brought this conversation of quid pro quo into this conversation was the president. It was when these allegations first came out about Ukraine, he started tweeting and frankly raising the bar, saying no quid pro quo, no quid pro quo. It wasn't Democrats that were even trying to set that bar, because you don't even need quid pro quo. But he met it. Aside from that, all of this aside, what we're centrally focused on is really him using the power of the United States government to engage in extortion of a foreign government in order to intervene in our elections. And so I think that that's our message. The fact that he undermined national security, that he is trying to undermine our elections, that he is engaged in flagrant abuse of power. It should be a concern to all Americans who believe in rule of law in the United States of America.
You've supported impeachment since before you were elected to Congress, and you made the case that the president could be impeached for profiting off the presidency, for his conduct in the Russia investigation. What message, Congresswoman, will it send if Democrats don't incorporate, for example, those issues into the upcoming articles of impeachment?
Well, I think many of those considerations will be taken up by the Judiciary Committee when all of this evidence is brought forth. So we'll see. I personally do believe that the president has engaged in flagrant violations of the Emoluments Clause. I'm concerned that we would allow this corruption to continue, but at the end of the day, we have to be able to come together as a caucus. And if it is this Ukrainian allegation that is what brings the caucus together, then I think we have to run with however we unify the House. And so while I believe personally that we should be pursuing and investigating quite flagrant abuses of the Emoluments Clause, even reporting as recently as the suspicious stops at Trump properties, even in congressional delegations or rather in foreign trips, I think that all of this is game for investigation. But we also need to move quite quickly because we're talking about the potential compromise of the 2020 elections. And so this is not just about something that has occurred. This is about preventing a potentially disastrous outcome from occurring next year.
Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, thanks.
Yeah, sorry about that. I know that was pretty long, but you really do need the context when talking about political figures and their ideas. Let's hope I don't get copyright striked.
Get into the really hypocritical aspects of this. And in order to do so, we're going to have to talk about and discuss one more presidential impeachment, this time the more recent and controversial one that happened to President Bill Clinton in the 90s. You see, although his impeachment might seem pretty similar and it was definitely somewhat politically motivated, but at the same time, Bill was caught red-handed lying under oath, which is perjury, and it's certainly unbecoming and a crime and something no president should be doing. And lying under oath is much more cut and dry than this bullshit about Trump calling Ukraine, something which only possibly might look wrong when you cover it with lots of heavy liberal spin. And to make matters even worse for the left, many of the same liberals in Congress who are mounting this biased, unnecessary impeachment against Trump now, well, these are the same lefties who were speaking out against the Clinton impeachment in the 90s. For example, if you look at this picture of the politicians currently launching this impeachment against Trump, well, first of all, they're all Democrats and they have no bipartisan support, which would be something a legitimate impeachment would have. And in addition, at least 3 of the people on here, the ones on the left side, they all rallied against Clinton's impeachment in the 90s, even though he was caught red-handed lying under oath, with an easy verifiable crime too. And Clinton's impeachment did have some bipartisan support as well, but since Clinton was a liberal and their guy back then, Nancy Pelosi, Maxine Waters, and Jerry Nadler here, they all defended Clinton in the 90s, even decrying the so-called politically motivated impeachment that they said was designed to take out an opposing party's elected official in unfair ways. Sound familiar? Well, that's because that's exactly what they're doing now. Now that it's 21 years later, and I guess these old farts forgot what they said in the 90s, because now they're launching a much worse and much less supported and much more political attempted coup at a politician who opposes them, something they said they were against way back in the day. And
Oh my god, this has to be the most smooth brain point ever. You mean to tell me that you think the allegation that the president is cheating on his wife and lies about it under oath is the exact same allegation as the president calling up a foreign power to get dirt on a political rival? Are you serious? Are you high? What's wrong with you? Holy Christ. I seriously wonder, how can anyone let this guy vote? What's going on here? How has he not poisoned himself yet by making a delicious, tasty smoothie from everything up under the kitchen sink? What's wrong with this guy? Alright, you know what? Let's not harp on this too long. I'm pretty sure that was just a very stupid comment. Alright, let's keep going.
with all that said, that's what inspired the title of this video again, because according to the left-wingers, it's always okay when liberals do it. As for the rest of the people in this impeachment group, well, overall, there's 3 from California and 3 from New York and 1 from Massachusetts. So talk about leading with some old, out-of-touch coastal elites here who...
Alright, nah, I'm convinced. This dude's got like brainworms or something. Are you serious? So you're telling me that all these people are elites, but you won't even consider Trump? What are you, blind?
Really don't understand what middle America and the average citizen care or think about. Also, I mean, doesn't this just prove that these champagne socialists...
So you're telling me this guy is calling people out for being hypocrites? Alright then.
I'm strong enough to, not listen to society. You say that you have to listen to society. I say no.
What do you mean by not listen to society? What has society ever told you that you've defied?
Okay, well, for example, society, what would you say society's figures are for human beings? Males or females? What kind of body types would society dictate?
It really depends on, I don't know, a normal BMI range and a normal
like
level
maybe
of health.
would you say skinny or fit or muscular?
Sure, probably muscular.
Okay, well, I'm a fat ass, so I don't give a shit. I don't care
about weight. I don't give a fuck about what people say about weight, and I do fine. I don't give a shit what the society tells me my weight should be, or what I should eat, or what I should drink, or what I should smoke, or who I should fuck. I don't give a fuck, Destiny. You met a true red-pilled alpha motherfucker. Welcome to the gun show. Ugh. Okay, I went a little crazy there.
Okay,
so
you're red-pilled because you're overweight.
Exactly. Nice. I like the way you do that, though, man. Honestly,
I'm just trying to understand. Again, let me repeat what I said.
I'm telling you, though.
You feel like I'm mischaracterizing your arguments.
No. It's not always mischaracterizing, but you just find a way to rephrase someone else's thoughts and make them look bad. And
I'm not trying to make you look bad.
It's a gift. You should embrace it.
I'm not trying to make you look bad, dog. I want you to feel like I am giving you the most charitable interpretation of your view. You have given me one way.
You're being fair. I don't think you're being a total jerk or anything like that. I think you're being fair. You had me on. You talked to me and whatnot. I'm just saying.
So you're telling me that you have bucked society. You realize that you're a literal slave to advertising. Being fat is not an accomplishment. You just bought into all of the fast food ads. You've bought into all of the marketing. You've bought into the dollar double cheeseburgers, right? That's not something to be proud of. You didn't buck a societal trend. The thing that bothers me is you're literally telling women that they're weak-willed and weak-spirited and weak-minded when you can't even resist.
No, I did not.
That's
I
what
did
you're
not
saying.
say that.
Okay, let me rephrase what you said earlier.
I did not say women were weak.
You said earlier that if somebody was discouraged by bragging to me that you can't resist the dollar menu at McDonald's and that makes you red-pilled as fuck. That you can't resist the dollar menu at McDonald's and that makes you red-pilled as fuck. Do you not see a problem there?
How did you know I went to McDonald's today? Are you watching me?
Boogie2988 is such a fat ass, am I right? JK, LOL. But really, I say that in jest, but the thing is, one of my first problems with Boogie is the fact that he's sort of become the fat YouTuber, which is much different than where he started here on the website.
Wait till you see the... No.
at the top of his head. Look at his lips. They think they know better than all of us, who were the ones who voted for Trump and are going to vote for him again. So that means this group of charlatans here is basically saying, hey, we don't care what the middle states in the country vote for or want and who they want to elect. And we don't care that Trump really didn't do anything wrong either. We're going to try and push him out anyway, and they think this because they're from bigger states, which they think are better. And this is exactly why this country has the Electoral College for presidential elections, by the way. And it's also why we should consider term limits for these kinds of old school politicians who stay in office forever and just get more and more corrupt. And if we didn't have things like this or Electoral College, ways to even things out, well, our whole nation would probably become poor, jobless shitholes like California. Sure, California has one of the biggest economies in the world, but damn, they sure are trying to run that place into the ground. In fact, I would say if it wasn't for the extremely high amounts of big businesses in Cali, it would have completely gone bankrupt decades ago. But since they have endless amounts of tax revenue coming from the movie, music, and tech industries and many more, well, that's how California has been able to stay profitable. And it's also why the Democrats can stay in power despite having bad ideas and policies. They just have so much money to throw around, they can plow through all of their big mistakes. Next, let's talk about where these California Congress people are specifically from, so we can further discuss why we shouldn't be listening to them at all here. I mean, when you think about it, if a politician or a group of them has the balls to say the president is corrupt enough to be removed from office, despite him being put there fairly, well, if that group of individuals is basically going to suggest that they're better than him, and also they're implying they are respected enough officials themselves that we should be listening to them instead, even though none of these guys won any national elections, and also the places they are from and have represented for decades, they've only gotten worse under their Democratic leadership.
So at first I was going to try and disprove everything he claims here, but then I realized that's not the point. The point is that these people are worse than Trump, not that what they're doing is or isn't true. So, we're just going to be going over basic things that Trump does and, looking at his monumental failures.
Nancy Pelosi, for example, is a representative from San Francisco, a once great city in America that is now literally covered in poop and needles and other dangerous, gross things. San Francisco has such a bad poo problem, they have multiple smartphone apps there where people can report poop and try and avoid it. And well, you'd think if Nancy was such a good politician, she might have at least helped with these problems a little bit, but no, they've only gotten worse and worse.
Under Democratic Obama, we somehow got ourselves out of a recession, but under Trump, he's hurt hundreds of businesses with his idiotic tariffs.
Next, there's Maxine Waters here, who represents South Los Angeles, specifically the fairly ghetto Inglewood area. And while that's already pretty bad, and she hasn't helped there much at all either, but I think overall the worst thing to point out about Maxine is the fact that she's been in Congress for 30 years and really has accomplished nothing. Waters is also a known liar and race hustler too, and she's certainly not someone to look up to with any moral authority, like what's needed in this kind of impeachment proceeding. Maxine is also the one who said it's time for liberals to get rough and rowdy with the conservatives, basically suggesting there should be some sorts of riots in the streets.
So not only does Trump pander to white nationalist shitheads kind of like you, not only has Trump lied probably thousands of times, but Trump has also stolen his father's inheritance, well, at least attempted to, and he also advocates for, well, who guessed it, political violence.
Yeah, get him out. Try not to hurt him. If you do, I'll defend you in court. Don't worry about it.
The president in no way, form or fashion has ever promoted or encouraged violence, anything quite the contrary.
So if you see somebody getting ready to throw a tomato, knock the crap out of him, would you? Seriously. Okay? Just knock the hell. I promise you, I will pay for the legal fees. I promise. I would have been fighting, folks. I don't know if I would have done well, but I would have been boom, 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 beat them. I had 10,000 people in the room yesterday, 10,000 people. And this guy started screaming by himself. And I don't know, rough up. Maybe he should have been roughed up. Honestly, I hate to see that. Here's a guy throwing punches, nasty as hell, screaming and everything else when we're talking. I'm walking out and we're not allowed to go with the guards are very gentle and he's walking out like big high fives, smiling, laughing. Like to punch him in the face, I'll tell you. You know, the guy was swinging very loud and then started swinging at the audience. And you know what? The audience swung back. And I thought it was very, very appropriate. He was swinging, he was hitting people, and the audience hit back. And that's what we need, a little bit more of. I would never give up my microphone. I thought that was disgusting. That will never happen with me. I don't know if I'll do the fighting myself or if other people will.
The president in no way, form or fashion has ever promoted or encouraged violence, anything quite the contrary.
You know, Part of the problem, and part of the reason it takes so long, is nobody wants to hurt each other anymore.
Finally, let's talk about Adam Schiff. He's representing the fairly well-off area of Burbank, California, so there's just way too much money there coming in to fail, but Schiff does have his own flaws, certainly. Just look at this embarrassing magazine cover of him, for example, in an attempt to make the guy look tough and badass or something, and like he's some kind of hero for challenging Trump. Well, I think this LA magazine cover actually did the opposite. Adam looks like a soft, weak soy boy beta who's trying way too hard to be a tough guy. And then when you read this cover's caption, well, it's just all over for him for me. It says, the mild-mannered vegan congressman from Burbank is the GOP's worst nightmare. Is Adam Schiff enough to take on the Trump war machine? Okay, wow. Not only does this make very little sense, it's also extremely cringy. I don't think any sentence with mild-mannered and vegan congressman in it will ever sound as cool as they seem to think it does. We all know vegans are pretty annoying and terrible too from what we've seen and covered on this show over the years. Not all, of course, but many. And most vegans you see in the public are just the worst. They're also always liberals too for some reason, like extremely leftists.
Yeah, a lot of vegans tend to be lefties. But you know, I do know one vegan who isn't a lefty and is also batshit insane.
Who literally hunt and kill other animals. I think that although I like veganism and I'm striving to become 100% vegan, because I think if you have the choice, you should just remove animal products from your diet. You really just should. It's the logically consistent thing to do, because if you love your dog and you love your cat, I mean, let's just be honest, if when your dog dies, you're going to cry like a bitch because you're so sad, yet you're going to make an exemption and eat bacon because you like the taste of salty, fatty things in your mouth. You're just not being very consistent. If you care that much about your dog when he dies, it shows you have compassion for animals.
Powerland video where he's doing like a stand-up bit about how the earth is flat, and I remember that I left the comment, I had a reaction to the video, and I left a comment to the video saying something like, yeah, this sounds crazy, there's no way this is possible. And a friend of mine just found the comment, and this is the comment right here. It really goes to show how crazy and stupid you can be when you're in a globe cult. 5 years ago, Red Pill Philosophy, I left this comment, why is the moon spherical? The moon is spherical, but Earth isn't? 5 years ago, I left this comment, and isn't this one of the most common uninitiated globe cultist response? Well, all the other planets are a certain shape, so Earth must be spherical like all the other planets, right? And it's just amazing to see how far you can come when you start using high IQ skepticism, really.
Yes, conservatives are too smart and well off to not eat steaks, chicken, or barbecue ribs once in a while. And finally, the end of this statement says Trump has some kind of war machine, when really, the president has been ending wars and getting us out of conflicts, if anything. Not only did reunite North and South Korea and turn Kim Jong from an adversary to an ally, but also Trump was the one pulling us out of conflicts in the Middle East recently. And ironically enough, these liberals who are calling Trump some kind of warmonger, well, they actually were the ones protesting our pullout back then, saying we need to fight more and put more of our soldiers on the line for basically nothing but politics.
So yeah, people probably do have a little bit of leeway to call Trump a warmonger, considering that he believes it's a way to, harm the families of terrorists. Let's also not forget the fact that the, pulling out of troops in the Middle East, yeah, both Republicans and Democrats, didn't like that because we were pulling back troops from an ally. But hey, just ignore the context. While I don't know much about the reunification of North and South Korea, I do know that our talks of denuclearization with North Korea have completely fallen through, but let's ignore that for even just a moment. Yeah, but even after all of that, we shouldn't be teaming up with a guy who's committed war crimes and his prison camp so bad that even survivors of the Nazi prison camps are calling it bad. What sense does this make?
In the end, that pretty much wraps up the discussion of these three terrible California representatives who think they know better than us and the American people, when really they don't. Not only are they big hypocrites who opposed impeachment like this before, but also they're not good people or leaders we should be looking up to. And there is one other shitty member of this group worth mentioning. Jerry Nadler here has many of the same problems as the others. He's an old, out-of-touch, coastal elite Democrat who thinks he knows better than everyone. His only main difference is just that he's from New York and not California. And as this New York Post article goes over, here's President Trump himself rebuking Nadler's shady political games, saying, "Nadler just said that I pressured Ukraine to interfere in our 2020 election. Ridiculous. And he knows that is not true," Trump said in the posting. Both the president and foreign minister of Ukraine said many times that there was no pressure. Nadler and the Dems know this, but refuse to acknowledge. Pretty ridiculous, huh?
let's imagine that there's a midget who's robbing a group of girls, okay? Let's say that the cops come over, arrest the midget, and his literal defense in court is, well, I wasn't committing a crime. The girls didn't feel threatened that I was holding a knife at their throat. They were laughing the whole time. Like, what would you say to that person? Alright, you know what? Let's just move on. We're almost done.
Literally no victim or crime here. The Ukraine people Trump talked to even said there was no pressure or anything wrong with their discussion. But the Democrats are so bullheaded, they're insisting because they're so desperate to make this thing stick because they know they're going to lose the election next year. And fortunately for our side, all of this impeachment stuff has only helped us. Trump's polls are up greatly and now his base is more galvanized than ever. And we're all waiting and ready to stop impeachment and also win the 2020 presidential election again next year. What do you guys think? How bad does this impeachment scam look to you? Did the Democrats forget they opposed tactics like this in the 90s, or do they really think it's okay when they do it? Comment your thoughts on everything below, and if you like this video and want more videos in this series, make sure you hit that like button. Let's see if we can get, say, 5,000 likes again, and I'll get started on another It's Okay When Liberals Do It video. Thanks again for your time today, guys, and have a good one.
So what's the conclusion? Well, unfortunately, this is how a lot of people on the right think, so yeah, I don't think I'm going to be doing any more videos on impeachment until something interesting comes out. Make sure you guys check out the description. Of course, I link all my sources in the description. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, comment, start a conversation in the comment section. It only helps my videos. Alright, peace out, I guess.